Day 587 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is a super quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at the Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 279,000 military personnel losses, which represents an addition of 360 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, quite a hefty 15 tanks, then 8 APVs, and a whopping and almost record-reaching 40 artillery systems. Then we'll head back across to the map today, and we'll start out in Russia as a Ukrainian drone sortie hit a Russian helicopter parking lot in the city of Adler, which is in Sochi. And this happened about 24 hours ago, which is in fact, it's over 500 kilometers from the front lines. And so since we're here, I think it does deserve a mention that Putin's palace is actually closer to Ukraine than Sochi is. So I'll show you where that one is. Yeah, there it is, right there, hiding. That's the one. And switch across to satellite view. Ugh, not great. So I may need to provide more high-res imagery in the post-edit. And it's a place worth an estimated 1.4 billion US dollars. Not rubles, but actual US dollars. And is the subject of many memes. So as you can see, public servant wages pay good. And this one's got not one, but 2 helicopter landing pads. And probably a pretty intricate network of underground tunnels as well, just for good measure. All of which makes me wonder if Putin can even publicly respond with rage when this palace is likely to be met with a swarm of drones down the track. Then, around the same time, there was a relatively unchallenged drone incursion that occurred actually in Smolensk in Russia. In fact, having a real trouble seeing what I'm looking at. Gonna switch back to the topographical. Then we'll go all the way up north, couple of oblasts north and deep, as these Ukrainian drone operations continuing to put on display a lapse in Russia's air defenses. Now, in this instance, the Ukrainian drone struck the Smolensk aviation plant, situated almost 300 kilometers or about 200 miles from the Ukrainian border, which certainly underscores concerns about Russia's air defense priorities right now. Then we'll head back to the Ukrainian map today, as on the topic of drones, Russia's Shahed drones. Launches of these drones were reported from occupied Crimea overnight, with Ukrainian air defenses shooting down 29 out of 31 of the drones, but also 1 out of 1 Iskander missiles fired by Russia as well. And I've got to say, we don't hear a lot about Iskanders or even Kinzhal missiles fired from Russia into Ukraine anymore. So if I had to venture a guess, I'd say the stockpiles are largely depleted, similar to what the third-party sources have been saying for a while back, on how it's going to take about 5 to 10 years for Russia to restockpile what it wasted on Ukrainian territory. Then we'll briefly head across to the Donbass today, as the AFU cleared and now controls the whole area near the railway tracks east of Klishchivka, east specifically, further than what this map would suggest, in fact, so we can see the railway right there. And at certain places, they've already managed to pass the railway tracks and advance several hundred meters further eastward. So that is, a good update to hear on that front, obviously, in terms of Ukrainian progression. Then moving just across a little bit inland to Yanakiva, where Russian reports of a friendly fire incident occurred. Well, sort of friendly fire, as it was stated that a freight train collided with a Russian Strela 10 air defense complex. I mean, really? Now, at first I thought it was some random case of self-sabotage, but not long after, it was found to be something equally as bad. An untrained driver that drove off the land component of the bridge and smacked into the freight train, head on it seems. Oh, but to qualify that earlier statement about self-sabotage, it may in fact seem more deadly of an attribute for an army to deal with, but Russia's rampant lack of untrained personnel has simply been quite devastating for them in this war. Which brings me to one of the top 5 quotes throughout this war. One of Zelensky's, in fact, which is, "We finished with the Russian professional army. Now it's time to defeat the unprofessional army." Get that thing on a shirt. Then somewhere in the east, another Russian 2S7 203mm Pion long-range artillery was destroyed by a HIMARS strike. And if you think that's bad, well, you haven't met the HIMARS GIMLARS rocket's flying cousin counterparts. The significantly cheaper and smaller and available in larger quantities, the drones, where in just the last 7-day reporting period, these tiny beasts took out 17 similar SPGs and 69 towed artillery, all with verifiable footage. And remember, these figures do not include the destruction of any of these platforms you see here from, say, Ukrainian artillery fire, HIMARS, GIMLARS, cluster munitions, tank cannons, and so on. As this graphic here is only but a piece of the pie resulting purely from FPV drones or other various drone drop munition platforms. And I'm sure some of you are looking at that absolutely whopping 33 tanks that were taken out. Again, just by these birds of prey. Then heading all the way down on the map to Crimea today, not exactly terribly map noteworthy, but Dragon's Teeth cope cones were spotted all the way over in Feodosia in Crimea. I might zoom back out for a bit of context there. And given the distance that these low-grade concrete monstrosities are from the actual front lines, it does certainly speak to Russia's paranoia. With these cheap cope cones, these knockoffs having nothing on actual World War II Dragon's Teeth that still remain in place in many parts of Europe to this day. Then we'll head across to some news for today, so starting off with some hardware news. So an Australian drone killer system named the Slinger, or the Slinger, I can attest to that pronunciation, are on their way to Ukraine. Now, up until more recently, say late last year, Ukraine had to exclusively use more expensive missiles to neutralize the newly found Russian drone onslaught, the Shahed drones, for instance, which is pretty much all we see of. But systems like the Slinger are a lot cheaper with a lower cost of about $150 to $1,500 per engagement. And that's Australian dollars, thereby making it about $100 to $1,000 US dollars per engagement. Also, the Aussie manufacturer is now reportedly already testing the laser variant of this bad boy, as opposed to the 30mm autocannon you see here. Then moving across to some economy news. So here we go again. It looks like the USD is about to reach parity, becoming worth up to 100 rubles, like it has recently for a brief moment there previously. Now, about a month ago, Putin convened a special emergency central bank meeting council to control the inflationary aspects of the ruble, although most economists expected those such measures to be just a temporary reprieve more than anything else, which is not dissimilar to how the Russian army has been throwing countless untrained and under-equipped soldiers to the front lines to fill the gaps. Then moving across to a bit of an oddity segment today. So I really wanted to mention this one about a week ago when it was first shown. So this advertisement at the front of a Russian butcher shop seeking the enlistment of Russians for the war in Ukraine just felt a bit off to me with its design characteristics. I mean, you notice the shape and the coloring scheme, don't you? So let's zoom in, shall we, and see who's really behind the mask. So step 1, remove the inside lettering with some basic graphic design capabilities of mine. Step 2, fill in the Russian Z symbol as per normal, as it would normally be. Then step 3, add another Z symbol and just, why not, pop it on its side. And voila! We have a pretty easy visual edit of the Third Reich behind the mask. Oh, and not just that, but probably the funnier part is the butcher shop signage right above. Not even kidding. It actually specifies, it actually says real meat products. Oh, the irony. Then in a super quick funny to round it all off today, guys, just the one. I'll do more 2 or 3 together in the next video. Time constraints. But with this one, so let's call this Spider-Man 1 Russia 0. So here we have a Ukrainian soldier dressed up as Spider-Man as he launches maybe a smaller caliber ATGM or a manpad out into the distance. Now, I don't know if he's in training or whatever the case may be, but I do admire his high spirits. So that will be it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Please continue to like and comment. Thanks for all of your support. I really do appreciate it. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.